Welcome to Follow Up Boss Office Hours. We really want to show you the Follow Up Boss tools that can help you best interact with whatever website you have, and as well as leveraging some of the tools to just have better communication with the right people in your database. So I'm going to share my screen super quick and just take a look at what we're going to cover today. So first and foremost, we're going to focus on tips and tricks for using the Follow Up Boss pixel. And so that is a feature that is included with your Follow Up Boss account. Everyone has it. We'll walk you through the essence of that. And then we're also going to focus on using back on site or saved properties for better follow-up, because I think we all know that leads that have been already in our database that are beginning to take action again are some of the best people to follow up with. Sometimes these web leads do have a long sales cycle, or they don't want to talk to you, so they want to talk to you. So we're going to help you find some cues, some context clues maybe there to know who to follow up with. We're also going to talk through some really simple action plans to just keep up with your past clients and Sphere. So before we do that, I'd like to welcome Caroline and Megan. Caroline, why don't you say hello and tell us what's going on with you these days?
Hello, I am Caroline. I'm a product manager here at Follow Up Boss. We've been working on some exciting new things here. Actually, all the time it feels like we're rolling out new things. But I'm excited today to talk about the Pixel and how we can incorporate that into some of your workflows, like your smart list, your action plans, your automations. And yeah, excited to hear about what questions you guys have and see if we can get some things answered today.
Very cool. And Megan.
Hey guys, nice to chat with you today. If we've never spoken before, I lead the success team at Follow Up Boss. So that means that my team is helping lots of Follow Up Boss teams or teams that are using Follow Up Boss work their leads, get started with our system. So we help onboard new teams and we work with existing teams. I'm really excited about this today because a lot of times we come across folks that believe Follow Up Boss is just a system to be used for brand new leads. So I get Zillow leads, leads for my website, other lead sources, but Follow Up Boss is also a system to use for your past clients and your Sphere and to grow those networks as well. So I think there'll be some great content today.
For sure. Cool. That's awesome. Thank you guys. And Caroline, why don't you just tell us at a high level, what is Pixel and what does it do?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the Pixel is basically a little snippet of code that you're going to place on your website. Don't be intimidated by the word code or anything like that. It's a super easy piece that we can always help you with. But what that does is it opens up the ability to start kind of tracking some activities that your leads are having on your website. So it's going to give us like really detailed information about when they're coming on your website, how often, what they're looking at on your website. And then we can even pull specifics in terms of like what properties they're viewing, properties they've saved. And what this does is it really opens up opportunities for you to start, reaching out to these people, calling the people that are really active on your site, finding, those old leads that, you maybe haven't heard from, but you can see that they are still active and they're looking at properties, as Megan mentioned earlier. So it's just going to make sure that you're making the most of your time when you're in Follow Up Boss by targeting those people who are actually active. So the Pixel just kind of like opens up that little world where we can start to see some of that information.
Yeah, it's just better intel around what your leads are doing, right? Assuming they have gotten the Pixel, so to speak. So Caroline, are you okay sharing your screen and showing a little bit? Let's touch on super fast, not how to install it, but under integrations, like where you could potentially grab the code and send it to your web guy.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me first start with that. So here within your Follow Up Boss account, you're going to go to the integrations page and then you'll select Pixel. And so here is that little snippet of code that we kind of mentioned before. So you're just going to copy this code and go ahead and send it to whoever's managing your website. It's like I mentioned, it's a pretty non-technical thing to do to place this. You know, maybe if you have something like Google Analytics or something like that, it goes in the same spot. So nothing too tech heavy there, but you'll find it here under the integrations page and here under Pixel.
Perfect. And so once it's installed on your site, essentially people that either are in Follow Up Boss or come into Follow Up Boss from your site, for ease of conversation, they're essentially cookied with this pixel, right? So you can start to see their behavior when they're on your site.
Yes, exactly. So, and there's a few ways we can start tracking information from the pixel. So one of the ways to do it is like when they're logging in. So if you have like a login process for your website, once they enter that email address, we're then able to tie it back to one of your lead profiles here in Follow Up Boss. So once they've logged in, that's a good way to kind of start that pixel tracking process. The other thing that you can do though, is if you send them an email from within Follow Up Boss that directs them back to your website, that's another way that we can kind of start attaching that activity to that person in Follow Up Boss. So either through the login or just by sending that email. And it's always good to drive them back to your website. So like if you install the Pixel today, you can always do like a bit of a outreach and say, maybe send like a batch email that says, hey, you know, I've made some updates to my website, anything interesting happening on your end lately? And when they click on that link, we've then kind of captured them and we can start tracking the rest of the activity that they've been doing. And so if you haven't installed the Pixel yet, it's not too late to start getting that activity for your leads.
I think that's a great point, Caroline, as well. You know, we see a lot of people install the Pixel and then they're like, well, you know, where's the tracking? You know, because they're waiting for leads to start, you know, tracking immediately. But if they're existing leads in the database, what you'll want to do is send those batch emails, like getting people interested in going back to your site, which is something you want to do anyway, right? So you get them engaging with you. And I think from like a past client perspective, just how you kind of phrased that, like, does anything interest you here? Or, hey, check out these homes that I've listed that are pretty similar to yours, just to gauge, like, are they considering listing anytime soon? Right? Because I think everybody's asking that question now anyway.
Yeah, I think, and to that point, just to build on that a little bit, especially, I won't say especially if you're a company, but if you are a team or a brokerage, consider creating a really, really, really simple email template for that so that your agents can have just some quick, you know, and honestly, it should be a pretty evergreen, hey, check out our site, check out our blog, check out our, where you're just driving them to a page on your site. Not only to do this, but you're also staying top of mind. I mean, it's all, and then quite frankly, you can see what they do. So if you drive them to your site and they look at your blog, you can see what articles they read. You can see if they start searching properties. To Megan's point, are they looking at your Sell My Home page? Like you're starting to now get this intel. Yeah, exactly like Caroline's screenshot. You want to run through that, Caroline?
Yeah, exactly. So the great thing about the Pixel is it is site wide. So as Lee said, like if you have a new blog post that you're interested in sharing, you know, that blog post, sending it out through Follow Up Boss, we'll start getting all of their activities. So not just that they've looked at the blog post, but then any additional activities. So some of the things that you're going to see in the Pixel, and this is just a screenshot from one of our demo accounts, but you're going to see the properties that they're viewing along with the pages that they're viewing. If you click on any of those links, it's going to open up that page on your website. So you can kind of see exactly where they were. It's going to also capture like favorited properties if you have that kind of function on your website. And then of course, it's going to gather any inquiries. So with anything that's like property specific, the other thing that the Pixel can also pick up is some of those other like important parts of the property itself. So like price ranges, number of bedrooms, square footage. This all, you know, is a little bit dependent on the data that's on that page, but we've, you know, put a lot of effort into making the Pixel robust enough to kind of read across different websites, different platforms to pull in that information. So it is a pretty robust look at what they've been doing. And then, yeah, you can kind of see what these trends are that they're looking for. So if they haven't specified, search criteria, you can start to pick some of that up just from the activity that they're doing with the pixel.
And Caroline, those numbers are an aggregate, right? So if they searched for, it's kind of an average. If they're searching for different price ranges, it's
Exactly. So we'll kind of average them out over, what they've been looking at. So, maybe they tend to look at the $300,000 price range, but occasionally they throw in that $1 million house or something. We've made it smart enough to, look at those averages and make sure we're giving you an accurate view of like what they're really looking at.
And I think this is again where this is so powerful to be able to now potentially send them. And we'll get into this in a minute for some of the emails or action plans, but what a powerful tool to be able to send somebody a 2-bedroom in the 200,000 price range in one of these zip codes and just say, hey, would you want to go see this? Or, hey, have you, did I send this one over yet? Or whatever that is, but just creating the conversation based on what you've got here. And also, you can't see this because it's a screenshot, but if you mouse over it, if you mouse over a couple of things here, it will give you additional information. It'll say like click 3 times or how long ago they viewed it or how many times they viewed it.
Yeah, so this is just from that demo, but yeah, this was one of the pages. So you can see how many times they viewed this page and then the last time that they viewed it. And then if you click on this view all, we'll give you a full breakdown of what they've looked at by the date, by the time. And you can even see where they clicked it from. So like this one came, like I clicked on this link from Google. So we can even see kind of that like marketing source in there, which is interesting information as well.
So yeah, as simple as this is, I'm glad we touched on that, Caroline. As simple as it is, it does give you pretty deep insights. Like if this was, say, an AdWords post that somebody clicked on, it'll actually show you Google AdWords. So you can get pretty deep with this. I don't want anybody to get lost in that, but you can use this for even deeper tracking of some of your marketing. So
I think that's a good point though. Just, if you're somebody who's just starting out, like you might not go that deep. It's okay. Like, let's just start, like get the code on your website, start tracking. You'll have like a core smart list to check, to look through, to call people, to start those conversations, send some batch emails, but you don't have to do everything, right?
I think that's really the key, honestly. The key is to get it on here, to send a couple of emails and just see it work. And then you start to realize what makes the most sense for you or how you can roll it out to other people, either at your company or just other ways that you can use it. So yeah, I think that's super powerful. Is there anything else specific? Quick question that's definitely a Caroline question. Can a website use more than one pixel? You can use the pixel on more than one site. I know that. But can a website use more than one? If you mean like a Facebook versus a Follow Up Boss pixel versus another pixel, then yeah, it's all just a
right. Yep, it's pretty flexible. So you can use it along with other pixels, like you said, if like the Facebook pixel or like Google Analytics. And you can put the same pixel on multiple websites. That's encouraged, especially if you have agents that have their own individual websites. They can put the same pixel on their individual websites to start pulling in that information to this Follow Up Boss account. And I guess you could also put multiple Follow Up Boss pixels on the same website, but I'm not sure exactly what the use case there would be, but that would be possible too. So that little snippet of code is really flexible, but it's nothing to get too tied up in the weeds about. It's pretty easy for anyone to place wherever they need to.
Cool. So anything else really specific to Pixel we need to cover? Because now I want to get into some of the other ways you can use the fact that there was some activity. All right, I think we're good. We can always hop back to Pixel if need be, but I don't want to go too deep on any of that. So yeah, and Michael, to answer your question, you can definitely just add that code under existing code. Just anywhere you can add like header or footer, depends on what sort of site it is, but yes. So now
and we have.
No,
I was going to say we have directions for all the different websites. So if you're not sure, just reach out to our support team and we can send you directions or even help you install it ourselves. So just let us know.
So now that you've got this and you start to get this intel, like this is great that we can go to this record and go, oh, look, they have activity. But we also know that most people are probably not going to go one by one through their contacts and look at what they did. So there's a couple of ways that we can do this. I think that we can use that data to find these people. And I think the two that come to mind, number one is a smart list, because recent website activity is a criteria that you could save as a smart list. And I think similarly, we'll not get too deep into it, but an automation can fire based on activity. Are there any other, did I miss anything there, Caroline or Megan? Are there other, I mean, I'm sure there are other ways, but.
I think those are the main ones. Yeah, looking at your recent activity or recently active smart list. That's a smart list that everyone has, but I'll show you the filter for that. It's just this last activity filter, and you can make it specific to a really specific range if you want it to look at people who are active in the last like 1 hour. And then, yeah, with our automations, we have triggers based on that kind of activity.
You can get really smart with this too, because I think like this recently active list will end up pulling in your new leads, right? So what you can do is set some additional filters, like, you know, was created more than 7 days ago, for example. So you'll pull people that are not brand new, but are back on your site, you know, and then from there, you can always like sort your list based on, you know, who's favorited the most properties. I mean, you can just get really smart about this and really dig in.
Yeah, something I've done recently with people, which is not rocket science. I think it's either built in or I didn't come up with this, but is actually sending an email template once they viewed X number of properties. And I don't want to get too crazy with this, but there is a merge code that is the last 5 properties they viewed. So you can pop that into a template. Little bit of an advanced use, but not really that crazy. Just be careful that if you do it as an automation, you may either want to set how frequently it can run or have it only run once, so it's not hitting them every time they view 5 properties. But like Caroline just pulled up, there's a merge field that's just last 5 preview. And it actually makes those cards in the template. So in the email template itself, it actually looks, you know, those little card style things with the properties in them.
Right. We'll pull up that like link preview, which generally, again, you know, going back to your website, it's pulling, you know, the metadata from your page. So if there was a property that they viewed that had any pictures associated with it, which probably most do, we'll pull in one of those pictures to be a little link preview so they can click right on the picture when they get the email.
So, but I think at a core level, start with the smart list. If you just installed Pixel and you're like, cool, now what? Using the existing recently active smart list. And you should have it. If you don't have it, what Caroline just showed, it's super easy to build, just literally less activity or activity less than X amount of time ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that really, I think is where it's at. And then I think Megan just said this, but being able to have the count right now that's under properties views and properties saved is also really powerful. You could bake that into your smart list. If you have a lot of this happening, you know, you may want to use a filter like that to break down to like, okay, well, I just want to see the people that have seen more than 5 properties in the last week or whatever. But again, I'm a fan of the smart list.
Yeah, I think they're really powerful. And the great thing is if you're using a different smart list, like maybe your hot prospect smart list, what you'll also see, I'm going to go back to my screenshot. So on any of your smart lists, wherever you're seeing this person, if they're online right now, you're going to see this little green dot next to their avatar that says online now. So if you're on a different smart list, you can still like at a quick glance see who's active on your website, you know, at the time. And like right from there, you can, you know, start a call list or, you know, hop into their profile, send them a text message. So there's this really nice visual indication that they're active too. So that's, you know, regardless of which smart list that they're in. So, you know, this recently active one is good, but know that you can see them from any of your smart lists as well.
Cool. And a quick question to tackle right now. Is there a merge code for, is it only last 5 viewed, or is there a way to set? I think there was last viewed, maybe, right?
Yep, you can do the most recent one. You can do the last 5. And if you do the last 5, but let's say they've only had 3, they've only viewed 3 properties, we'll make that just the last 3 that they've viewed. So
Right.
they don't have to have 5 in order to use that.
Okay, perfect. No, that makes sense. So, and another quick question, is this applicable to subdomains? It would be, assuming it's installed properly in like header or footer code, so it's just throughout the site. So the short answer is it depends where you install the code, but for the most part, if the header or footer or wherever you've added the code is on that landing page. But to Caroline's point earlier, I almost said this and I was like, no one's going to need to know this. You could specifically install it on a landing page. So if your subdomain is some sort of landing page or a search dot or something like that, the short answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then let's look a little bit at, is there anything else on the smart list, or do we want to look into automation a little bit?
Yeah, I think we can look at automations.
Yeah, let's do it.
So
Caroline, yeah, what can we do here if we have activity?
yeah, so I guess let's just kind of start and talk about the triggers that we have here that are specific to website activity. So we have that new inquiry. So this would be if they've submitted an inquiry, whether that's a specific property inquiry, just a general inquiry. Generally, if they've like signed up for, any kind of sign up form on their website, that's going to usually come in as a new inquiry of sorts. So we have this option. We have saved properties. So if they've gone in and you have that like save function on there where they favorite it, they heart it, whatever, that usually comes over as a saved property. And then we also have viewed properties. So this would be if there's a specific property that they're viewing on their website, we can pull this in. What we don't really trigger with this would be like if we sent out that blog post, for example, there isn't just like a random page view trigger, but these are more important because they're specific to the property, and those are a better time to reach out anyway, as opposed to just like a random view on your website. So these are the trigger options. You can use all of them in the same automation, or you could separate these into their own individual automations if you wanted to treat them separately. I've seen usually people use the property inquiry by itself, but some people will couple together the saved and the viewed properties. That's generally what I see used the most.
Cool. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And then a condition, just to touch on that, is where you can essentially filter
Right.
this thing still happening.
Yeah, so the pixel is really powerful. We're going to start grabbing a lot of information from folks, which is great. But what the condition does is it helps us kind of narrow down the group that we want the action for. So similar to your smart list, as Megan was mentioning earlier, we can add some filters on here. So we might want to say it was created more than 7 days ago. That's going to filter the people that are doing any of these activities that are more than a week old. So like maybe, when they're new, when they're a brand new lead, you might want to make that follow-up less automated. You might want to be a little more involved, but after a week or after 2 weeks, we might start automating some of this. So that's what this created filter. I think the other one that I think is really powerful is the last communication. So let's say they've done one of these things, but we haven't communicated with them in more than like 30 days. So, that would be people that are just a little bit more stale on your site. They haven't heard from you, you haven't heard from them. So you can really filter what you're wanting to do based on this last communication as well. Some other ones that I've seen used as conditions too, that I think are pretty powerful is like pond. So let's say you have a lead that's in the pond right now, and it's kind of, up for grabs. And they've done one of these things. This is a good opportunity to kind of bring this back to the front of mind for some folks that, they can get kind of lost in the pond, or, you're waiting for something to happen. So a pond is a good kind of filtering condition as well. But these, again, with conditions, this is, anything that you can filter on the people table, you can filter for here. So there's a lot of options in terms of conditions. So, after you kind of have your conditions built out, the last part of this is taking action. So, when someone's done one of these things, they've gone through our conditions, we can choose what we want to happen. This was great timing because a little earlier today, we released the reassignment action. So if someone does one of these things and passes through these filters, we can reassign it. We can reassign it to a particular person, we can reassign it to a pond, but I think one of the best things we can do is we can reassign it to like a first to claim group. So again, let's say that, it's an older lead, we haven't been communicating with them, they have a new inquiry, we can reassign them back out to the group. We can broadcast and say, hey, this person is active again, they're up for grabs, who wants to have them? And so I think this is a really great ad to use with any of these new inquiries. It's kind of like that second chance at lead flow, if you will.
Yeah, that is absolutely huge. There's two things that's so funny that I guess is what happens when you're on the product team. Like, there are two huge things there that you just kind of went through. Like, I don't want to say they were no big deal, but first off, the created more than 7 days condition is a must, because you don't want this running on somebody that just inquired. And so if you don't put that in there, you're going to get the new lead coming in who may already be getting an action plan, who hopefully is getting contacted by you or people on your team. And then we don't need an automation to also run on them. It's like, hey, you were back on our site. They're like, no, we were just on your site for the first time. So I think that is really key. That's really, really, really big to use, depending on how you have this set up. But just be careful so this isn't just firing on their initial inquiry if we're looking to do this with old leads. And then, yeah, the additions of the additional actions of the being able to reassign, because before all you could do was start an action plan. And that reassignment is absolutely huge, especially with the first to claim, especially basically saying, hey, here's an old. And if you do that, you can create a new group that's specific agents that you might want to take those back on site, type of leads. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat to the YouTube video of those new actions. These are absolutely huge and amazing. And Caroline, you might have tackled it, but can you mention again, maybe I just didn't hear, the running once per person versus multiple times at the end of the automation?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the end of the automation, we have the option to run once or run multiple times. So, depending on what your action is, what your conditions are, you might want to change this option. So I think, like, for example, if you have property viewed as the trigger and you have this running multiple times per person, every time they view a property and the conditions are met, this will happen. So sometimes it's best to have this run only once, especially if you're sending out email templates through an action plan. So, remember, we can always add an action plan here. I'll just do this one. So if there's any sort of email template being sent out, I think run just once is going to be the best option. You don't want them getting that same email every time they do an action, of course. However, if it's less, less communication oriented, it's more about internal workflows like reassignments or our other new action, which is adding a note, it would be okay if this was to run multiple times. So that means every time this action happens and these conditions are met, these two things will happen. So that's what this setting does, just the run once or run multiple times. And you can just switch it on or off here.
I just want to mention too, with this particular example, because it's so good, is that if you aren't using ponds right now and you're a team, do explore using a pond. But you can also run this type of automation if you're not using a pond and a lead is just assigned to an agent. And you could basically say, hey, if these things happen, these properties, like a property was saved and last communication was, more than a day ago or 7 days ago or whatever, you can also just say, hey, I'm going to reassign these active leads that we're not touching, right? So that's just another way to think about it if you're not using a pond. Because I know a lot of teams that we work with, run into this, well, like all these leads are assigned to these agents, these leads are active, but nothing's happening. So
Yeah, and to pair that with this note, I mean, this is a great thing to add. So when you add a note here, it's going to be added to the timeline. So you can even put in here, this lead was active and no one was working it, so we can always make note of that in the timeline. Or, I guess to go further there, you could add a few coaching steps in here to add, some guidance for whoever goes to that profile next and say, hey, this person was created 7 days ago. These are the things we know, and here's how you should reach out to them.
Yeah, that's super smart. I mean, this is I think the biggest issue with Pond, so to speak, is the fear of like people truly getting left behind. And this completely, I think, eliminates that. Just the idea that if certain things happen, they can be reassigned, you can notify people, can do both. And to Caroline's point, I love the idea of using the note to just give even a little more intel, like leads manager style of like, oh, hey, this guy's been on our site every day for the last 2 weeks. You should give him a call or send him this email template or whatever the right action is. But yeah, I think this is really really smart, really good stuff.
And actually, Lee, you touched on a good point too. So we have other filters that you can add here. So we could even filter for, the calls were less than one. So we could add a specific note that says, hey, this person's active, all of these things, and no one's called them. Like, give them a call. That can be the note here. And that can be very specific using these different filters.
Yeah, and I think the other good side of that, if you're working on getting an adoption, maybe very tastefully explaining that this automation, this thing that's going to help them, is powered by them logging their call, because then it's going to know that they've only had one call or only had 2 calls, or their last call was more than 30 days ago. So I think all too often, we worry about getting the adoption first before we do this. Sometimes we can set it up and tell people, hey, you're going to look really dumb if you don't log a call and you call this lead 10 times and they somehow end up in a pond and show up as a new lead for somebody else because you didn't log your call. So
usually that triggers a behavior change, right? Like you
yeah.
lost your lead. Wait, what did I do? No, I really did this. So
I mean, know your audience. You gotta work with it. So I love this. I think this is absolutely, I saw this video come out today. I was just like, this solves a huge pain point, specifically for ponds, but just for the next level of automation. So I'm a big fan. So let's go now to action plans. And if you guys have questions, you can drop them in the Q&A. If you want to come on screen, you can raise your hand, but we want to get through the simple action plan first. But then we will take any questions you can drop in the Q&A. Or if you want to raise your hand, we'll bring you on to ask your question live. So I think, Caroline, do we just want to maybe just do a new action plan? I was thinking maybe we just start a brand new, super simple plan. I'm going to steal one from somebody that I work with and it was their idea. So I'm not claiming the idea. I like the name. So this would be a plan for a sphere or a past client. We're not talking lead conversion. We're not talking necessarily, I mean, it could be for somebody back on site. We'll touch on that in a second, but this is a little more your high value people. How do we do this? What are these touches? And what they do, which I think is absolutely brilliant, for like an A or an A plus, they just have a task triggered to the agent. And the tasks are call, text, or email, because the agent still has the autonomy to pick which is which based on the relationship. But the task says exactly what to do. It's not just like check in with this person or do something. It's like do one of these actions. They follow a little more of a Buffini style process. So the next task is a pop by. So for those of you who don't know what that is, that's just a physical, you're either leaving something on their doorstep, or maybe in the old days you would, tell them you were coming or whatever, but you're just leaving something of value, popping something on their front porch or whatever that is. So then we would name, tasks like this pop by. And then of course they have a great list of all of these, like, here's our pop by ideas. Then I think the third step is simply something, it's not tied to a date, but it's something tied to, I wish I could remember what it was specifically, but basically call them once a quarter, do a pop by once a quarter, and then, yeah, either do another call, invite to client event. I should have written down what the third thing was, but the point is not even what it is. The point is that this is giving you monthly or quarterly touches on your most valuable people. Now, a quick point of clarity, they do power this by an automation, and that automation is powered by a tag. So if you were going to go through and add an A or an A plus tag to your contacts, the automation would say, if the A or A plus tag is added, then run this plan. And what's great about that is that they're doing a couple a week. So if their goal was to do 5 a week or 5 a month, now they've got this plan running. Miriam, you're totally right. Handwritten note. Thank you. That was the third step. Just a handwritten note. It's real simple.
This is so good. I just want to say this is so, so good and so, so simple, because I would love to know how many people on this call are even doing something this basic, like this is like,
I think we're all lost in all these new leads that don't want to talk to us, and we're not calling these people.
and don't drip them either. Please.
Right.
Yeah.
And then obviously, Caroline, we'd obviously want to uncheck the contacted box. I know you know that, but just to complete the circle. And you might even want it to run 30 days after the initial step. So you may want to apply, if you're going to apply it by a tag, like I mentioned, you might consider just having it start, because you don't need to apply it and then like get a task right away. You're just getting it up in queue. And then you could, I don't want to get too advanced with this, you could apply a tag at the end to help run it again. I would say in this case, depending on how often you want to do it, you might just build out the steps, make it like a 2-year plan or something to that effect.
That's
You can build these out as far as you need to. I've seen some that are like, 5 years down the line.
10 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild, but I think really keeping it that simple. And again, making sure the task is named appropriately, making sure the task is not just like, hey, do something, but like, do this thing.
I also like you have to figure out sort of your plan for tasks, but for these ones, we have different task types. And even though you can't change the task type name, that thank you one is like a heart. And so when you go filter your tasks, you could look for those, like, these are really important.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because filtering by tasks is absolutely brilliant. Because if you're like, hey, I'm doing handwritten cards today, let me check, only check the thank yous. Then boom, there's your card list. You can even look at the future thank yous and get a little bit ahead in your, how many people you think use future tasks? People have like 10,000 overdue tasks. Future tasks always makes me laugh a little bit, but that's super cool. You would literally have more closings if you did any of those 3 things we just covered. But if you want to do all 3 of them, then that'd be pretty sweet. So questions, drop us some questions in the Q&A. I see a few. All right, Megan's typing answers to those. All right. I was just checking those questions and just chatting if somebody wants to come on and ask a question. So just to recap a little bit while we see if anybody has questions. If they don't, then we're certainly good to wrap. But so installing the Pixel, whether that is just forwarding it to a web person, it is simple to do yourself. And there are instructions and a video right here on this page as well. But as Caroline mentioned, support is happy to help with this as well. It's really incredibly easy to do. And if you're using WordPress, there is a simple, it's called header and footer something that makes it super easy just to, at the plugin level, just add code to your header or footer. But yeah, like Caroline's showing right now, that's all. It's really, really, really easy to do. Then using either a smart list or an automation to identify the people that have been active and determining what criteria of people you want to identify, whether you manually or in an automated way follow up. And then just using really incredibly simple action plans to just not lose the most important people in your database that sometimes are not the squeaky wheel. So they're just not necessarily always getting the love. So cool. I think we'll wrap with that. This recording always pops out in the Friday email. It shows up on the YouTube channel, usually within 24 hours, often much, much less. And we always stream live to the Follow Up Boss Success community. So if you're in there, you can watch it as soon as right now. You want to rewatch it right now? That's all you. Go for it. Megan and Caroline, thanks so much for being on, and see you guys all again soon.